Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. I'm happy to have another fantastic guest today, Bryn Drescher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm really happy to be here.
I feel like this is a weekly occurrence now since we kind of been doing this the last few weeks, but that's been
I
great.
know.
So happy to have you on my show now. I get to switch roles and put you in the hot seat.
Uh-oh. Hopefully I have some good answers.
Well, let's just start off with a little fun fact about yourself. I know a lot about you now since we've been talking like the last 3 weeks, but for all the listeners out there, give something that most people might not even know about you, even if they knew you.
All right. I'd say most people don't know this about me. I mean, obviously those closest to me do, but that I was on a reality show.
Oh, okay.
So I competed on a show that was online. So those of you that are like, oh, well, let me find this. It was online first. It was by the same producers of The Amazing Race. It was called Focus Rally America, and it was 6 teams of 2 racing across America, doing amazing race type challenges along the way to promote the Ford Focus at the time.
Mm.
And so I had to walk on a I-beam 500 feet above the Colorado River over the railing of a bridge. I jumped off the stratosphere, and yeah, a lot of things that had to do with heights, which is my biggest weakness. So,
So 500 feet above the Colorado River. Tell
river,
me
yes.
about what that was like. Was there any apparatus to keep you from falling? You
Yes,
know,
there was.
okay.
There was. But I will tell you this, and anyone that's done any sort of climbing or whatever, you never touch the support thing because, of course, I guess you could accidentally unhook it or do something that messes with it. So it is like walking normally, except that if you're like me and you're scared. So the winning team, what we had to do is we had to run, basically get to the end of the I-beam, pull up a half of a clue, and then our teammate had to do the same thing, pull up the other half, put that together to get the clue to go to the next destination. And when we did the challenges, you were all there at that time. So it wasn't like you got your clue and then you jump in the car and you're gone. Like the whole thing is completing this task. So the winning team, I believe, finished in a minute and 30 seconds. So running down the I-beam shakes like this, and then they pull up the thing, and okay, 14 minutes it took me to
Wow.
get to the end and back. But I did it. So I'm proud of that. I didn't quit, but it was a harrowing experience for me because even though I had the tether, your mind doesn't feel like you have the tether. So you have to be not afraid of heights to do that challenge. So
No doubt. Yeah. The fear of heights is a real thing. That's one of I don't have too many fears, but that's definitely one of them. I
yeah.
remember being on the Space Needle up in Toronto, and you're just 240 stories in the air, and you just kind of look down. It's like, oh, my stomach
Yeah.
just gets in knots. So I could definitely see, even if you have an apparatus, like your mind just plays tricks on you, and
Yep.
you could walk across that same beam if it was 40 feet or 50 feet long,
Right.
on the ground at no problem and not have any issues, but just the simulation of that actual height and the potential for disaster to take place is something
Yes.
that it really gets in your head. And so I guess that's
Absolutely.
a great segue to what you do,
Yes.
trying to accomplish great things using your mental strength and fortitude to basically overcome all issues when it comes to sports and athletics.
Yeah,
So why don't you
absolutely.
tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do? Oh, before we
Yes.
do
So
that, did you guys win? Did you guys win the competition? Because I know you're
okay,
competitive.
so this is possibly a controversial opinion, but we were the only girl team.
Hmm.
And there was the last week, I think we were in second place going into the last week. So things looked good. However, there was one challenge that week in particular that favored men, and it was a jumping challenge. It was a trampoline challenge. You had to jump to get a balloon and then run back to your partner and break the balloon on their head. And all the balloons were the color of your team. So you had to get all the balloons that were the color of your team. Every team that had a girl, which was 2 other teams, when they sent the girl out, they always just said, come on back, forget it. Like, I'll go. But there were 2 guy teams, and they both won that particular challenge. We came in last in that. There was another challenge where You could eliminate a team, and I guess everybody ganged up on us, and we got out first in that challenge. And then the last challenge it was a ropes course, so you already know how I did with that. So it was like, why do they keep going back to heights? Like, is that the only thing they can test you on? So needless to say, we did get last, but I made a good amount of money, even though we didn't win. You could win a car, and I think half of $50,000 or half of $100,000. It was one of the two. I can't remember. And the gray team won, and it was a guy-girl team. So the two guy teams didn't win, but it was a great experience, and I wouldn't change it. But yeah, no, we did get last.
It sounds like a fun experience. We're going to have to look that up on the internet, put it in the notes.
You won't be able to find the episodes, but you will be able to find probably pictures and stuff like that. But I did get to be in a Super Bowl commercial, so that was also pretty cool.
So there you go. Another fun fact. But
yes.
Anyway, just transition a little bit. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do, Coach.
So I am a mental performance coach, and that just means that I help elite athletes master the mental skills necessary to elevate their game to perform consistently and confidently to scale to the highest heights of where they want to go in sport, whether they're the highly, well-known, highly recruited, or the most talented. So that's what I do in essence.
And you got your elevator pitch down, girl. You're ready to sell that thing. I like it. So tell a little bit about your background. You were a track athlete at Michigan State.
Yes.
And very competitive there. But tell everybody a little bit of an origin story.
Yeah. So I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. As Chris just said, I was a track athlete. I ran on varsity all 4 years in high school. I did play 2 years of basketball. Funny enough, most of my athletes are basketball athletes, but I didn't make it past sophomore year. I say due to, probably a mental fortitude, as well as just not coaches that supported me feeling like I was going to have a future in that sport. So I just defaulted to the sport that I was naturally gifted at. I walked on at Michigan State, which is something that I've come to realize is quite a feat. At the time, it's just what I wanted to do. And when I left college, I just, I got into the mindset, and I've always been really passionate about it ever since. And I just decided to work with athletes because I was using all these analogies, sports analogies anyway. And I love the mindset of an athlete because they're, fierce and determined and willing to do what it takes, and just makes it easier to be able to find somebody that's going to do the work so that we can make the progress that we want. So.
Right. And so I think you asked this to me on your podcast, but at what point did you figure out that mindset could give you an advantage in your respective sport? When did you realize that? Because that was a question that I had never really been asked before, and I didn't know if it was like already in me or was that something that I learned. But it probably started when I started coaching, and I just seen the different ways people would handle themselves before games, and then you would look back and think about how you handled yourself before a game, and then you can say, oh, well, my friend used to do it this way, and so forth and so on. So at what point did you find out that this could be a real good asset for not just yourself, but for other people?
As much as I'd like to say that I knew about it when I was running, I did not. I was a natural leader. I did everything the coaches asked me to do. I won't say I didn't complain, because I did. I was a captain and, always a vocal person throughout my life. So I had wisps of it. And somebody who walks on to Michigan State, obviously I had some sort of mental game. I grew up with a lot of adversity as a kid, single parent household, foster care at the age of 5, stuff like that. So obviously I had some mental fortitude, but as far as employing it strategically, I did not know anything about that. I just did what I was supposed to do, ran, and, I like sport. And so I would say it was when I was a coach, and, getting into it myself post sport life and thinking back on just even recounting these to you now, that's mostly just from what I know now thinking back. But then I didn't have any knowledge of it. I was just like, okay, I'm good at track. I run hard and I finish, in the top. That's all I knew. And so, but I do remember lining up in my races next to girls, and I remember their names. There was a girl named Lindsay. I won't say their last names just to protect them. And then Hallie, and they were the fastest girls in the 200 in my conference. And I always just thought, oh my God, that's Lindsay. She's really fast. Or that's Hallie and she's really fast. And my coach used to say, did you ever think that maybe they think that about you? I was like, no. So I had a lot of nerves when I used to race. Like I would buy all these snacks before my races and I couldn't eat until my last race was done. And I was always in the mile relay because the 400 was my main race. And I did like 3 a meet sometimes. So that was what I remember about my mental game. I was just always thinking about the competition and, hoping that I was going to come out on top, but very nervous about, not doing well. So that's all I know.
Interesting. We talked a little bit about my childhood growing up on your podcast, and I wanted to know, did going through what you went through, I didn't know that you were in foster care. I knew that you were a single parent household, similar to myself. But what was that like for you, and how did that help strengthen you? Because a lot of the times in my mind, I think back to some of the difficult or hard times, and it makes me get over some of the ones that aren't so hard or difficult. And that's how I've been able to look at things and just approach every single thing daily with like, hey, this is not that bad. Like you can get over it. And so I'd like to know your process.
Yeah. When I think back, right, when I went to foster care at 5, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I don't remember, like, obviously I probably was scared, but when I remember it, it's like, this is what happened. Sort of like, how when you watch game film, it's like, you got to look at what happened and then, how you respond to it. And I think over the course of my life, the biggest thing that's been my saving grace is just having a lighthearted attitude about things and not taking it too seriously. Now, I know that sounds strange to talk about foster care at 5 because I was in foster care for 2.5 years. My mom, I went to 3rd grade back in the suburbs with my mom. So she did end up getting us back, but I left in kindergarten, in the middle of my kindergarten year. So somewhere in there, I would say it's about 2.5 years. It was a very difficult time. I remember crying when my mom would come visit on the weekends and then she would leave again and stuff like that. But I think when humor was the biggest thing that saved me as a kid. When I tell the story of what I went through, I mean, I'm not only a single parent household, but I'm also one of the only Black kids in a predominantly white suburb with a mom that doesn't understand about the taunts that her children are experiencing at school because we're being raised by our mom, not by our dad, things like that. So there was a lot. We had to be tough. We just had to, because we had to handle it ourselves. So I think I just had a natural resilience for these type of things. And, I wouldn't say that I was Teflon done or anything like that, but I definitely think that the strength that I am now, like one of the biggest characteristics people always say is you're so strong, you're so strong. And I am, a softie when it comes down to it, but I think I was able to weather my childhood with my wit, my humor, and just, kind of being a headstrong kid that had a good environment around me when I got back from foster care that really supported that. My mom was very fortunate because she worked a lot. And, when you said when we recorded the podcast about your mom being your hero, my mom did everything she could to keep us, housed and have food on the table, but we took care of ourselves. We got ourselves up for school. We took we went to practice. We did our homework. I'm not giving her any credit, but my mom was very exhausted. She went to work before we went to school, and she sometimes came home after after we were done with practice and stuff. So we were, in essence, taking care of ourselves in a lot of ways. And I think that's what makes me so tough, is that I just had to survive. Like I had to do what I had to do to survive. And I liked being in sports and I liked the leadership role that it gave me. And so I just found avenues where I could thrive. And that's what I attribute a lot of my success to.
Right. And so for a lot of kids growing up, they might not have had that opportunity to show that resolve, and they've gone the other way. What do you think made you go in the right direction? Because I talked to you about it last week. There was a lot of stuff that could have went left, but for whatever reason, whether it be God or just luck or what have you, most of the stuff came out in my favor. And I just mentioned I don't win all the time, but I win more. I just got to win more than I lose, and that's been a big thing for my life. So whether it be the grace of God or just some weird luck, I found my direction to be where I'm at today. What was it for you?
Yeah, I at the time I wouldn't have attributed it to God because I didn't have that type of faith at that. I mean, I was raised Catholic and nothing against the Catholic faith. I just didn't wasn't a devout like believer at that time. And but I know now that that's probably what it was because I mean, there's so many things that could have happened. I mean, the Chicago school system, I was able to read a 6th grade textbook in kindergarten. The Chicago suburbs has a much better school system. So my grandparents helped my mom buy a house out in the suburbs. She lost us for those 2 years, but through that, she got her life together where she could take better care of her children. And, you know, we were always in a middle class neighborhood on a poverty salary, you know. And luckily, my grandparents helped out quite a bit financially. But I think the biggest thing was just my mom was also a very good example. She didn't drink. She didn't, she didn't smoke. She didn't do any of those things. And I just would attribute it so much to environment. I was so fortunate. Like my high school had everything. We had a soccer field, we had a football field, and they got to practice on separate fields. It's not like we were sharing those fields, like a lot of what I'm seeing here in California. We had a track, we had a pool, we had everything, right? So we had the boys and the girls basketball teams, and we weren't sharing gyms with them. So I don't even know how that's possible, but we had so much resources that were available. And I just made good choices as far as friends, I guess, because all my friends were going to college. I remember when I took the ACT, because they take that in the Midwest, they don't take the SAT quite as prevalently. All my friends got like 27s, 29s, 30s, 31s, 32s or whatever. And I got a 23. I took it twice and I got a 23. I don't do very well on standardized tests. But I remember asking my mom years later, what if I didn't want to go to college? Because I thought, I think in a lot of ways, I held myself to a standard. It was like my own personal drive. It's weird to say that, but I just thought that that's what was required of me. Like, I think I just took what my environment was demanding and I was like, oh, that's the same thing that I need to do. Right. So I asked my mom, what if I didn't want to go to college? And she was like, that would have been fine. And I was appalled. I was like, what? That's crazy. I thought she said I had to go to college, but she never did. It was what I wanted. And to her credit, she did everything in her power to make our dreams come true, even to the, in debt and all that stuff. But I just really appreciate that my mom supported us and that we had the right environment because she didn't give us curfews. She didn't give us a lot of stuff, a lot of structure, because I think she grew up in a very structured environment. So she went the other way. But luckily, our friends had curfews. Luckily, everybody we hung out with was making good decisions because we could have been running the streets, but we weren't. We were home and participating in sports, and we were all standouts, and it just worked out in her favor. So, and in ours as well.
It's just so interesting that everybody's story is so different, and the way that they get to wherever you are is just so different, and it can't be mimicked. My story is completely different than yours, but at some point our paths meet, and we create a kinship, a bond, a friendship, and we can talk about all of our struggles in a positive light. They weren't all struggles. I told you, like, I like scars because I have so many different scars from all the things that I've done in my life.
Yeah.
Whether that be scars on the external, or whether
Or the
that be
internal.
internal, or whether that just be in my mind too. So many times we will put things that happen to us, and like you mentioned, you talked about humor, and that's why I love comedians, because they're able to put something that is so real, so raw, that should not be funny, into a funny context in which we can all laugh and appreciate the pain and the struggle. And I remember when I was in college, Kevin Hart came out there, and this was back in 2004. Kevin Hart came out to this small town in Oregon, and he was playing a show, and we had no clue who this guy was. This little guy comes up on the stage, and you could barely even see him on the stage if you were in the back, because actually it wasn't a stage. We were in a hall, and he was like on the stage was probably like 2 feet up, so people in the back couldn't even really see him. But he went out there and absolutely murdered it. He killed, and it was so crazy to see him, like, a few years later I saw him on Soul Plane. And then I said, okay, he's working his way up. Now he's got this movie, and then you start to see all the things that he's done since. But this dude was grinding his butt off. He was
Yeah.
at the after party inside this bar with all these college kids at that time,
Right.
and just hanging out and being a regular person. But you could tell that he took his craft so seriously. And now you look back, all those nights on the road, they have finally paid off for him, with great success. And everybody's had their ups and downs, but he's
Yeah.
made something really out of nothing. And just to see that whole process was always amazing to me. And all of us have similar stories. If you've done anything, just because people don't know our names the same way that they know Kevin Hart's doesn't mean our story wasn't great, just like his. And
Exactly.
you have a fantastic story that
Thank you.
I didn't really know about until we had to switch roles.
Right. Right. There's even more, but one thing you said about making light of things. Our house burned down my freshman year in high school. And I only tell that because people would always. So you just imagine you're in the cafeteria and the only thing you want to do is mix in with everybody else. You don't want to stand out. And there's like a big old banner saying, help the Drescher family, and like raising money for you during lunch hour. And I'm attending school. So it wasn't like, because none of us were hurt in the fire, thank God. But so, so people, I would sometimes take the change from my lunch money and be like, oh, for the family, right? Or someone would ask how my house was, and I'd be like, it's well done, right? Like, I mean, it was just ways to get through the situation, obviously, not to make light of fires and families who lose, their homes or loved ones. But it was just like, yeah, I mean, what a question. How's your house? It burned down, But anyway, we were fortunate that we had home insurance, and we were able to get a new house built for us. To where I actually got my own room after that. So it turned out to be a silver lining after the displacement while they were rebuilding the house. So,
Oof, crazy. Can't even
yeah.
imagine. Um, why don't you talk about like some of your coaching experiences with coaches as you were growing up? I know that's a big thing on you as far as
Yeah.
like how are the athletes being treated? Is there any way to help coaches be better coaches? Like, what advice would you give to coaches or anybody in a leadership position when it comes to growing and mentoring your either players or your staff members? What would you say based on all the experience that you've had in your life?
Yeah. So one of the things, it would be based off my experience in basketball in high school. So my coach, my freshman year, again, I won't say her name. Of course, I remember her, but she never really, I mean, obviously she had decided I wasn't very gifted in basketball. It happened to be one of my favorite sports, but so I didn't practice that much. And my memory is getting in that game. Like she would put me in the game, but she wouldn't practice me very much. So I didn't have a lot of skill, experience. So when I would get in the game, I didn't have a lot of confidence. I was second guessing myself. So I'm sure I made mistakes very quickly. And I basically, I just felt like I had, she was just like, she would just yell at me the whole time I was in the game, and then she'd sit me. And so for me, I think, we talked about this quite a bit when I did, you did my podcast, but we talked about it's all about relationship. And what I did not have with her at that time, and I think coaching has changed, gotten better, but I think there was coaches that always did it well, is developing that relationship. I think this idea that it's my team has to go away. For when you talk about a leadership position, it's our team. Collectively, you without a team is not a coach. And a coach, without, players without a coach is not a team. So it's this idea of how can we work together collaboratively to bring out the best performance in each of your performers, regardless of their skill. So if I'm a D player, let's say you've decided I'm a D player, then let's try to see how we can get me to perform at C, right? And similarly with everyone else. And I don't know where my basketball level would have been had I been nurtured through that process. I do believe I played in junior high. I don't really remember my junior high experience, but I just remember that. And then my sophomore year coach, I remember this distinct moment where he pointed out that I was the best shooter out there. But he did that, it turns out, to psychologically tell other people that, to be like, oh, I don't, she's not better than me, right? Type thing. So that was interesting. And I don't know how I knew that, but maybe somebody told me he said that, or I don't know what the case was. But I do remember I started one game, I made one mistake, and I got benched. And I think that I don't like when coaches use the bench as a way to teach a player not to make mistakes. I don't find that to be helpful. It's like, get them out of there. They don't know what they're doing. And it's like, when you don't give a player the opportunity to, now I understand you have to coach and you there's a point where you have to call it, right? But I think after a minute, that's not really calling it. So I think that there needs to be some grace with players of also not using them as psychological tools against each other. I think it's really important that you're there to nurture each individual player that you have and then the collective of the team to help bring out the most. So we know, one, that starts with relationship, two, belief, and the, ability to find out what the player wants, and then how to get the best out of them. So I think my advice to coaches that they can do better is get to know your players, find out what they need from you, and then, just give it to them. Because I don't like, and I said this on a previous podcast with Jason Holzer, who connected us. I think that all coaches need to fire themselves from telling or even deciding what the upside potential of a player is. I understand that you have more experience in the game than perhaps that player does, but there's always these outliers that come along and prove you wrong. And I think that is when they were nurtured, and you might be right, but I don't think your job is to tell that player what's possible for them. And I think that if we could expand what we think is possible for that player, we allow them to rise to that versus, you know what, you're probably never going to play varsity. So, it's probably just fun for you to come out, and we're glad that we had you on the team or whatever. I just think that coaches have to be careful about that. So yeah, those are the things that I would say, because you don't build confidence in a player by punishing them every time they make a mistake. There has to be a way that we process mistakes. And I think that a lot of coaches just don't know how to do that. They want to play to the ones that play the best. And if anyone's making a mistake, they're just kind of like, okay, I don't have time for you. I need to get my best players in there. And I don't fault you for wanting to win and employing your best talent. I just think that if we treated everybody as if they were valuable, you would at least bring every player up a notch.
100%. I think that's a great suggestion. And if you've ever watched basketball at any level, even the pros, whether it be WNBA or NBA, college, high school, there are mistakes so often.
All the time. Right.
It is very rare. There's never a game where it's mistake free, where you don't turn the basketball over, you don't miss it. You make every shot, you do all these things. And every sport is like that. This a lineman is going to miss his block, or you're going to get out of the block slow.
Right.
You just, every sport, there's so much room for error. And a lot of times you're just trying to minimize as many errors as you possibly can. One of the things that I've always been thinking about really for like the last 4 years is what actually happens on the court, and try to mimic that as much as possible in practice, because that is where we really have the ability to control things as a coach. In the games, we have to a lot of times give our control up, because the players are the ones that are going to be making the decisions on the court. So we have to get them good at making decisions and understanding that they're going to fail a lot of the time. So what I've learned from other great basketball minds is small-sided games repeatedly. Put them in situations where they're going to see. So advantage, disadvantage situations. All right, defense has the advantage. There's 2 players on 1. Offensive player, what are you going to do? Okay, now vice versa. There is 3 offensive players and 2 defensive players. Now you got to figure out what you got to do, because a lot of time it's a breakdown situation. Somebody breaks down defensively or offensively, and the other team gets the advantage because of that. So you have to put them in situations where they're going to be facing that a lot. And before, many years ago, coaches want like a perfect practice. So if you put them in a situation, you're going to go, all right, I want you to jump, stop, pass, and kick here, and you're going to hit the shot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can do that all day. But for us, I don't even do regular layups anymore.
Oh, nice.
We put them in a live situation right away. Because at the end of the day, I just want them to be able to make the layup. And so teaching them which layup to make is yes, important, but at the same time, the thing is, the most important is them making a decision. So now,
Yeah.
okay, if I do this, this player is not there, but I'm in front. Now I can go ahead and shoot this thing, and I will have the advantage. Or if there are two people on me, I might have to jump stop and pivot away from the pressure and then
Yeah.
pass it out. So you're doing things that happen in the games, and so what I got from what you just said is essentially that if you allow your players to go out there and make mistakes, it's going to build confidence, because the time that they do figure it out, it will have now sunken into their mind, instead of doing a
Right.
perfect drill, jump stop against air, pass the ball, you shoot it, and you continue to do that. Anybody can make that look really good,
Exactly.
and it looks good from the outsider if you come into by practice. But if somebody sees a lot of playing and it's messing up, and yes, we stop it. We do stop practice to show you, and we might rewind and say, okay, start from here and figure out the situation. I'm not going to tell them, because they're the ones that are going to have to do it.
I love that. I think that's so important. I mean, I did not have the confidence to make decisions when I was in the game because I wasn't given that confidence. And I mean, I take responsibility for my part in it, whether I was the most practiced player or, I mean, I showed up for practice every day. And, of course, my mind is you're going to teach me the game of basketball and I'm going to perform better because I'm a good student. I do what you ask me to do. But if I don't get that opportunity, then yeah, I have less confidence. That's just, luckily it didn't affect me in track, because I had the skill. I was doing well. So I didn't need someone to build up my confidence because I was winning. I was one of the better girls. I was faster. So in that, it was more about nurturing my, probably my mindset more, because I had to work on, how to be a leader, how to be vocal, how to make sure that I was, still doing the work and helping encourage my teammates, that type of stuff. And being a freshman on varsity, my first year in track was a big deal, obviously. But I had good coaches. I'm not, those are just my basketball experiences. And again, I'm not saying that, with the right coaches, I could have been the best basketball player ever, because I don't know that to be true. I just know that I did not find either of those coaches to be particularly nurturing to individuals that they had already deemed were not worthy of their attention.
Right.
So,
And as you mentioned last week when you talked about, having positive affirmations, something that
yeah,
your love language is, and had those coaches built that relationship and rapport with you, they would understand how you receive
exactly.
things, and and they probably could have benefited the entire group if they did that. But
Yep.
I'm sure they would probably look back on it and say they would probably do some things differently. As I mentioned to you, I
Yeah.
would do a lot of different. I've done a lot of different things, and I'm going to continue to learn and grow. What we're doing now is probably going to be different from what we do in 5 years. That's what I expect. And
Yeah.
if I was the same person, then there's a lot of things that are going to be lost in translation because I didn't seek to grow anymore.
Yeah.
So when did you start doing what you're doing, coaching athletes to better their mindset? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was originally coaching just, life coaching, right? Like helping entrepreneurs or whoever wanted it. And then I decided that I wanted to get into athletes. So I just went to a coaches clinic here in California. I don't think you guys have it. Well, I think they're everywhere, but have you heard of PGC basketball?
Yeah.
Okay. So they had a coaches clinic here. I'm sure someone told me it's a good place to go because, you go where your market is. So if I want to get hired by a coach, I should go where the coaches hang out. So I went there, I met a bunch of coaches, told them I was a mental performance coach, or like I work with mindset or whatever I said. I don't know if I had those terms at that time as far as mental performance coach.
Well,
But
if you gave them that elevator pitch,
I didn't have that at then.
Okay.
No. I did not have that then. I was just like, look, I want to help athletes. They need the mental, right? I knew the stuff about the 90-10, that type of stuff. But so I found one AAU coach that gave me a shot. And I think that was, I would say 5 years ago now. I don't know. I've been coaching mindset for a long time, but I've been with athletes for about 5 years. And from there, I just built more and more athletes and opportunities. But I really love, and it was basketball, obviously, like I said, but I really love being able to talk to them and help them and mentor them into making better decisions. Because decision making, like you talked about being able to make those decisions in the moment when emotions go up, intelligence goes down. So that's a big part of it. And so helping them make better decisions so that they can have better outcomes and performances. And we always say skill over scoreboard, right? It's not about, to me, yes, I want you to have the best performance, and I know winning is important, but I'm more interested in, did you play your best in that effort? So
Got it. All right, so I'm a young athlete or just an athlete in general, and I'm trying to better my mental skills.
Okay.
And we find you. So we come to you. What is the process in which we're now going to work together? I believe it's like an 8-week at minimum program
Yep.
that you run. So tell everybody about that and how that all works.
Yeah, so usually the person that's going to fund the operation, unless I'm working with a team, is going to be the parent. So there is the opportunity for a parent to purchase for their individual child, or for the coach organization to basically do it for the whole team. So the first thing I do is I want to find out from the parent their perspective of the situation, or the coach's perspective of the situation. In a team environment, most likely I would be hired without talking to the team. But in the parent scenario, I do like to talk to the athlete, because for me, it's 100% important that you are bought in. Because I know you've worked with parents, and you might be listening as a parent. You know you want the best for your child, but sometimes your child is not on the same page as you as far as what they're willing to do or invest their time, energy, because you're going to come up with the money, right? But time, energy, and initiative into. And so for me, it's got to be a fit, because if I'm going to pour into this athlete, I want them to be a success story, because I know they have the tools. They have to be the kind of athlete that has the tools to be successful. And I don't necessarily mean talent. And I know, of course, a bunch of bangers that are going all the way to the pros is great for my resume. But I want a hardworking person, because we all know that there's lots of talented people that don't want to do the work. So I'm looking for a hardworking individual that's hungry to just get better. And so in that process, it's an 8-week process. I teach a 5-step method in that 8 weeks. But the reason why it's 8 weeks is because it's about relationships. So I'm not going to rush you through that process. Some weeks take 2 weeks to go over that certain principle of the 5-step method called the all-in method. And this is all about being all in for yourself. And the biggest thing is, we want to connect. We want to find out what your goals are, where you want to go. And then we're going to map out the process for you to get there. Of course, it's the same core program for everyone, but how it's applied is going to be different for everyone. I have some athletes working on emotion regulation, right? They're too heated during the games, and their emotions are getting the best of them, either through anger or anxiety and fear. And so we got to find a way to bring that emotion down. Some other athletes are just looking for ways to have a quicker mistake response. So they're beating themselves up from that mistake, and that's causing them to not rebound fast enough to get back into the play or be effective over the long run of the game. So all players have different things. Confidence, they struggle with confidence issues. Maybe they had a couple bad games. Injury recovery. These are all different reasons why athletes come to me, right? Oh, she's not as confident as she used to be, or she's having trouble at the next level, or he's looking for how to stay a little bit more calm on the court because he's getting frustrated. A lot of my high performing players, they're upset that their team doesn't function at the level that they do. And these are all things that people struggle with in real life, right? When we work in team environments and we're bringing our A game and other people are maybe, in our opinion, not. So in that 5-step method, there's 5 pillars of the program. Awareness is the first one, because you can't change what you're not aware of. And so we're doing a powerful exercise to get you aware of how you're seeing things, so we can make any shifts that we need to, so you can kind of see things differently, so you can respond differently. The next thing is identity. You know, Chris, better than anyone. The identity is probably the most important thing. That's why we talk about it second, not first, because first I got to find out how you're seeing things before I go into your identity. But identity is a twofold reason. One, we know that athletes go through a dark night of the soul as they transition out of sport. They get injured and they feel like they can't perform the sport that they love. Most people we call them student athletes, but if you're talking about college or even high school, most athletes sometimes identify as athlete students. They're athletes first, students second. And of course, the education system looks at them differently. So the key is, if I'm injured and I can't play my sport, then I don't know who I am. And so obviously over the pandemic, what we just experienced, there's a lot of students or student athletes and athletes that went through a really hard time when they couldn't perform. And this is on every level, all the way up to the pros. Right. And so that's one. But two, giving them a sense of identity. So separating them from this idea of that they are only a basketball player, softball player, ice skater, hockey player, whatever, you name the sport. All right, that's who I am. I'm a track runner. That's who I am. If I can't run track, then I have no value. I'm nobody. And so we want to get clear on that. But then the second reason for identity work is to develop a rock solid identity, to recognize that when you have a bad performance, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. So separating those two so that we can rebound quickly and developing a way to sort of tap into another gear if we need to, but also be able to be out of uniform when necessary, whether that be physically or mentally. And then the next thing is vision. We all know that a lot of people are maybe choosing their path based on what's been told for them. So you as a coach have a vision for the athlete has a vision for them. And then, the parents and whoever else has a vision for that athlete. So getting the athlete clear on what do they want, and then let's architect a plan where we work reverse engineer it, right? So you say you want to go to the Olympics, you want to go to the NBA, you want to go to the WNBA, then okay, what do you need to be in a year? Where do you need to be in 6 months? Where do you need to be, So we're going to work on that so that they have a clear articulated vision of where they want to go that pulls them on those days that you just don't want to practice. Because no athlete, I don't care how much they love their sport, loves practice all the time. There's just no such thing. And then the next thing is when I got a clear vision, I got a whole bunch of reasons why I don't think it's going to happen. So we got to work on your LBs, or what I call the limiting beliefs, right? What weighs you down. And then the last phase is just taking them through some tools like mental rehearsal and self-talk and certain exercises to get clear on how to employ these on a regular basis. So those are the basic tenets of the 5-step all-in method. It's not an acronym. It's just how to be all in. And it's going to give you the right foundation, because everybody says sports is 90% mental, 10% physical, but 90% of coaches don't devote any time to, as we talked about on my podcast, to any mental practice. So I'm giving you the foundation to have the right tools in place so you can rely on these when you need to, that should support you throughout. But again, it is up to the athlete to work on that in between the calls and such, because I don't actually physically work with the athletes. We get on Zoom calls, we go through, I'm going to teach you a lesson, I'm going to give you some homework, and then the next week you're going to come back and tell me how you applied that. But I've found a lot of athletes have been really receptive to it and have found them being able to be more resilient, be better decision makers, and just be happier, healthy athletes altogether. So,
right. What is your thoughts on? I forgot the author, but burn your goals. Are you a big person that believes in the actual setting of goals and SMART goals, which you obviously know the acronym for that. But, tell me about goal setting versus not setting any goals.
So it's interesting. Obviously, there's different schools of thought, and obviously, if you're too outcome focused, that's when you get very disillusioned at times as an athlete. So everybody wants to win, right? But how long is a basketball game? I believe it's 48 minutes on the high school level, but I could be wrong. How long is it?
32 high school, college 40, NBA, WNBA 48.
Okay, all right. So professionals is 48, and then it goes down to 32. Okay. So when you have a destination that, like, you have goals, right? And most people's goals, right, it says, SMART, we know stretch. I'm not a big fan of SMART goals, but I'm not saying they're not good. Everything has its place. There's no such thing as anything that's all bad, and there's no such thing as anything that's all good. I'm actually listening to a book, Originals, and it talks about how there's actually an advantage to being a pessimistic thinker. It's called defensively pessimistic versus strategically optimistic. So it's really interesting, because if you're a very dedicated person, sometimes, identifying all the variables where it can't work out can actually be good for you in performance. So that's just an example. So I think that it is good to have goals. The problem is most of us make goals that don't have any way to check in on those goals somewhere in the process. So for example, I want to be a lawyer, right? If I'm in high school, a lawyer is a long way off. So how am I going to gauge myself in my process of becoming a lawyer along the way? Where are my small benchmark wins along the way? So yeah, burn your goals. I understand it because it's too outcome focused. Most people think big picture and then they don't break that down. So this is why we talk about in my program about reverse engineering. Your long-term goal may be to be in the NBA, but where do we need to be a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever the case is, and then work our way backwards so that we have a way to articulate that plan. The best example I give is I ran a marathon. My goal was to finish in 4 hours and 20 minutes. I finished in 5 hours and 20 minutes. I felt really good in the beginning. I did not have a 1 mile, 5 mile, 10-mile goal. I burned myself out, and I just didn't run as well because I didn't have any way to gauge myself against my long-term goal. So bite sizing is really important. And also, it's all about the process, right? So if you're only focused on the goal, then if you fall short of that goal, and this is the biggest issue, because obviously we get dopamine hits every time we get a win, right? So if I say, I'm going to go 5 days without eating any chips, right? I'm going to, like the first day, I'm going to feel pretty good. I didn't eat any chips today, right? It might be the hardest day, but I got through it. Right. But day 2 and 3, if I don't have a way to gauge myself, right? Like, I don't have any chips in the house or whatever the case is. If I don't have anything to celebrate a victory along the way, usually my resolve gets less and less. It gets weakened. So dopamine hits are really important in the process of goal accomplishing. So there's the idea of only having a goal, then it's like, oh, my goal was to run a marathon in 4 hours and 20 minutes. I ran it in 4 hours and 30 minutes. Oh, I didn't hit the goal, so I'm a failure. So I think that's the other thing, is to make sure that you're not only making it about the goal, but the process that it took. Because a lot of times, whether you make a SMART goal or whatever, a lot of people say, like, even in a financial goal, let's take it out of the sports world. People say, well, my goal was to make $10,000 this month and I made 9,000, I failed. But that was the most they've ever made before. And similarly in sports, that's the fastest I've ever ran before. Or my goal was to win a gold medal and I got a silver, or I didn't place, but I was at the Olympics and I ran my fastest time ever. So I did everything I physically could have done, but it wasn't where I thought I was going to finish. So I think it's important, when we talk about the mental game, to really have a conversation with yourself that all is not lost because you did not accomplish the goal. You need to look at what the gains are in the process, do a real evaluation of reviewing the game film, and then what adjustments need to be made to get closer to that goal next time. But celebrating the process is really important.
Yeah, lots of tidbits that I'd like to touch on, but one of them is you don't have to always achieve your goal just to have success, as you mentioned. Right. I remember one of our games, it was a close game. We were down by 2 points. Our point guard makes the right play. She drives it. She kicks it out to our best three-point shooter, the best three-point shooter in the entire league. And she set the record for single game threes and threes in a season. And she passed it out. The ball goes up. I'm thinking it's going in because it is literally perfectly on line. And it's on its way in. It goes halfway down and then pops out, and we lose the game. Oh. And I just remember the conversation and look that our player had on her face, and she was pissed because we lost the game. And I said, if we played that game 10 times out of 10 and you make that pass, I'm completely okay with you making that pass because it was the right play, regardless if the shot went in or out. And
right.
If we make that, yeah, everybody gets excited. We win the game. But that doesn't mean that we played well. We just won on the last shot. And vice versa. We didn't play bad. She just missed the last shot. And it's okay. Yeah. You have to be able to live with the result. And you finish your marathon. That is a great achievement in itself.
It's huge, right?
Not too many people can say that. And so just because you didn't hit the 420 mark didn't mean that it wasn't a great achievement at the same time. And I think that we have to some would say that like winning is everything, but it really isn't. If you lose in the championship game, like if you're speaking NBA, there was 29 other teams that didn't win, but you guys got to to the furthest extent that you can without actually winning the title. And we've put such a premium on actually getting a ring and those things, and then you see the same thing happen when guys start trying to team up. Hey, you guys said
Yep.
having a ring is the best. Oh, and now you can't do it that way. You can't team up KD with Steph and Draymond and
Yeah.
Clay. And now when you leave, now we're going to be upset because it's just an interesting thing that we have focused so much on winning, and we have devalued the process of actually improving and
Absolutely.
getting better. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to change my mind about. And just because you didn't win doesn't mean you actually lost. You still got better, and sometimes the other team or the opponent, or sometimes in life somebody's just better,
Yep.
and there's nothing that you can do about it. Like, you ran your best time in the Olympics, or some which race was that? Was it the 200?
I'm not
Or
sure which one.
I
Who
think it
was
was a
it?
200 or 400, and the United States guy ran his best time. Any
Oh,
other
right.
Olympics, it would have been a world record. But the guy, I forget where he's from, maybe
Oh,
Germany.
it was a different country. Yeah, I
Yeah,
forget. But
and
yeah.
they were at it. It was one of the most exhilarating races. It was a 200 or 400, and they both went at it. And the American guy just kind of looked at him like, "There's nothing else I could do." This guy literally ran his best race. I ran my best race. There was nothing else that I could do, and
Yeah.
but he was the silver medalist, and he still crushed the United States record. And
Yeah.
that's how you kind of got to look at it. You didn't get the gold, but somebody is just a little bit better than you. And you know what? It is what it is.
I think that's so important. I love John Wooden saying that you can play your best and lose, and you can play your worst and win. And so I think this is why I always say skill over scoreboard. It's really important that you understand that. Like I did an Instagram post that said, you were not born for trophies and medals and bling. You were born for the process of who you become in the pursuit of excellence.
Mm.
So when you go back to that moment of because everybody said, oh, it was that last shot, right? If I had just made that last shot, it should never come down to the last shot. Sometimes it does, and you want to be the one that has the ball, and of course, you want to be clutch. But there's just some things you just can't account for. I mean, any other day, she takes that same shot, it goes in, but then all of a sudden, you're beating yourself up for days. Like, why? Maybe if it was my release, it was something, it's like, it's just these little things, but it's like, in that moment with that sprinter, you ran your best time ever, and it's like, but my goal was gold, so this was not a good thing, right? I met a professional soccer player who said that if I don't score a goal, it's not a good game for me. They only score on average 2 to 3 goals a game. So, and we're talking about total for the team if they score, right? Some games win 1-0. So to say that as a forward, if you don't score, it's a terrible game. We have this achievement focused mindset, and it's all about, if I don't do that, then I didn't play well. I'm not a good contributor. And we have to change that, because this is crushing athletes. Not only, and I'm not saying the athletes aren't doing this to themselves, but it has become the culture of sport to focus on the end result only and to forget about the process and becoming. There's a long, hard fought battle in most sport contests that just, you can't account for. Just that one day that guy finds some superhero strength and he does something he's never done before. But because he did that, sports is a collaborative effort. Had he not run his superhuman time in the 200 or 400, whichever race that was, the other guy doesn't run his best time ever. And I think that's the thing that you don't recognize, is that, because the Greek word competition comes from the Greek word competir, which means to make one better. So competition is just there, like, Will Smith says, either I'm going to die trying, or I'm going to win, or whatever he says, or you're going to quit. Whatever the case is. But the point is that all you can do is your best. And if you give your best, then I'll never be mad about the score or whatever the case is. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure other coaches hopefully are saying that same message to their kids.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to talk about mental health.
Yes.
And mental health is obviously a hot button topic, because so many
Yes.
athletes and people are talking about it now. And I just got to be honest with you. I don't even know which way to go on it, as far as, all right, you got some hard things in your life, and now you use that as an excuse for mental health, or are there real issues that are going on? I can't tell. I
Yeah.
really can't tell. I'm not a mind reader, but I
Right.
want to make sure that I believe people when they talk about their own mental
Exactly.
health. But at the same time, there's times where I could have probably, blamed it on this or that or mental health, and I just tried to fight through it.
Yeah.
So to talk to me about this and help me find a better perspective on mental health,
Yes.
because I'm a mentally strong person naturally. It doesn't mean I don't have bad days.
Yeah.
And could those bad days be mental health? Possibly. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've never told myself that it was that, and maybe it was
Yeah.
just the era that I was brought up in, or what have you. But I also do know that I have friends and family members that have gone through mental health stuff, and it is not fake. It is a real
Yeah.
thing. And so so when it comes to athletes, I want to, this is a selfish topic for me because I need to understand it better. So please
Yeah.
enlighten me and the listeners.
So one of the things that you said that I really love is I want to believe people. So the one thing that we talked about when you were on my podcast that I think this comes back to is everyone is different, right? So there is no one size fits all for how someone exhibits or displays or handles their mental health. So there's a difference between mental health and mental illness, right? So mental health would be the proactive approach. How am I handling my mental health so that it doesn't, basically disintegrate down to mental illness? And a lot of athletes that people are, it's interesting, right? Let's use Simone Biles as an example because she's the most recent example. So this young lady has won, I mean, she's one of the top performing gymnasts. I don't know about the, ever, but I know she's the GOAT of gymnastics right now. Okay. Because I don't like the whole conversations about like, is LeBron better than Kobe? And, it's like different eras, different times, I don't know. So I don't get into all that. But we know that she is arguably the best gymnast in the world right now. So given the amount of practice, effort, and situations that they go through mentally, physically, whatever, the idea that she would beg off of any sort of competition for a mental health excuse is absolutely ludicrous to me. Having the knowledge of the Chris McSwain that you're talking about, I could have done that. No, you would not have done that. Do you understand? You would not, because you're the type of person that's going to play through it. And as is Simone Biles, which she did play through it for as long as she could until she couldn't. And it became detrimental to her health. Okay. So do it for the team. I'm like, well, she's been doing it for the team. And then she got to a point where she couldn't do it for the team anymore. And it could have been perilous to her, not only her, health, but also like her physicality. She could have become maimed because it's not a sport where, I want to be flying through the air if I'm not feeling like I know what's going on, because they have to have good center of gravity and awareness and things like that. So I think that's important for people to recognize is when someone tells you, and I've done so many videos on this, that they're having trouble with their mental health, you need to believe them. Okay. They call it the invisible injury. Yes, I understand that it does not manifest the same as a sprained ankle, a broken leg, a broken limb, something like that. It's like, oh, that's clear. The trainer can see the torn ligament. So yeah, they can't continue. How many players have had a literal injury, pump some cortisone in that knee and let's get back out and let's keep doing it. Now that's the old school days. Hopefully they're not still doing that, but that may still be happening, right? Players are like, do whatever you got to do. Stitch me up. I want to be back there. If it wasn't for the concussion protocol in the NFL, they'd still be going back out there, right? So we look at how sports has evolved over the years that people can talk about mental health. So when it comes to your athletes, are you going to have a caliber of an athlete that may use mental health as an excuse? Absolutely. You may have one, okay? It could happen. But I am not willing to wager the mental health or safety of an athlete on the fact that I'm going to call BS on this guy because I'm doubtful of whether they're tough. So I would look at the history of that athlete. I would look at, because you got the players, the kind, right? That come out and they're complaining. They don't want to practice today. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. I don't know about their home life. So investigate. This is where relationship comes in. Do you know this person? Right. If I know the quality and caliber of this athlete, I know they're not going to not want to perform regardless. So if they're telling me they can't continue, then that's probably true. You don't get to be number one in the world in tennis. You don't get to be number one in the world in gymnastics, football, basketball by not being a fierce competitor.
Right.
And to use an example, I don't know if you saw it, but the tennis
Naomi
documentary,
Osaka.
not hers. I mean, yes, but Untold, which is Marty Fish, who was around the time of Andy Roddick, but he had a whole anxiety thing. But all they were teaching these athletes about how to be mentally tough, not mentally well. There's a difference. So you can be mentally tough and fight through. Andy Roddick says even to this day, eating a certain type of sports bar, like one of those protein bars or whatever it is, performance bar, he gets the shakes because he associates it with competition. Now, he didn't struggle with anxiety, but the pressure of being the world's number one is a lot. People basically hinge their whole life on you performing at the Olympics or at the World Championship, or if LeBron doesn't pass in a game, this guy's trash. And I don't know, whatever. I came out here and, I'm such a fan and I can't believe he would do that. Right. So for some reason, we have an attachment to these people. But for me, for mental health, it's really important that we just get to know our athletes, we educate ourselves, and we think about all the times that we don't take mental health days, we don't take self-care, we don't do that. They're worse because they are constantly competing. They are constantly doing what they feel they need to do because their identity is so wrapped up in being good that it's even harder when the world expects you to perform, and not just perform, but win. And if you don't win, then I don't know what you're doing out here, right? We need if you're representing the U.S. and we're not prominent in that sport, or you've got to continue the legacy of us being prominent in that sport. So there's a lot that I think that people just need to have compassion and empathy, because we don't have people coming in our jobs, shoving microphones in our faces and asking us why we lost a certain account, or why we're not performing as good as we were performing last week or last year. And so I think it's just, to me, I understand as a coach, you got some players that you're like, I'm calling BS on that. And then some players you're like, nah, I kind of trust that. But that comes from relationship and knowing that player. But also, if somebody tells you mental health, just trust them. And if they're lying, then that's somebody who's going to end up, I would say, matriculating out of your sport anyway, naturally. So you don't have to worry, because people say, well, won't this open a door for all these people to use this as an excuse? Not a top performer. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
No,
I just think that there's nothing they want to do more than perform, because that's what they think they need to do. And they also feel like that's who they are. So I'm finding that very hard to believe that somebody's going to fake it in that instance.
That's very eye-opening. And if I'm not mistaken, Simone Biles was involved with the coach from Michigan State
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
And so, people probably didn't give her enough time to heal from all of that. And, I'm not even going to even speculate, but that could play an issue in it.
Oh, huge.
And Naomi Osaka, her documentary is almost heartbreaking to watch at some points.
Yeah.
Even the Tiger Woods documentary, when they showed that on HBO, that was heartbreaking to watch, because he's just a kid and he's put into this situation where this is all he knows. And so when he goes off the rails and things like that, it's because probably he's had so much trauma in his life, and that's how he has to deal with it. So, you're right. Like the regular people don't have those same type of pressures.
Right.
And these athletes have extreme amounts of pressure. So why are we so judgmental when they do something that is maybe off the normal? Because they don't live a normal life. Every single thing that they have is being recorded, it's being monitored, it's being scrutinized over and over. They have morning talk shows based on what this athlete did or did not do in the game or in their private life. And you got TMZ that are following these people on and on and on. You have all of these individuals that are their livelihoods are directly based on the outcomes of these games, because they are in their lives as a coach, as a manager, as some sort of person involved in the greater success of this athlete. It is daunting. And so You're right. And like I said, I want to believe anybody that says that, but you put it in a way for me to understand that that is exactly how you should handle it. And that's why I'm glad we touched on this topic, because there's probably people out there that are, and everybody's not built like you or I.
Yeah, no.
And everybody's not built the same way, so people are going to handle different situations. We also don't know the pressures that like high school or college athletes are under,
Yes.
from their peers or their family.
Yep.
And yeah, like you said, you have to trust in the fact that that is a real thing. And one thing that you really mentioned, and this is important to me, because you said it's a huge difference between mental health and mental illness, two vastly different things.
Right.
And I think a lot of us get those things confused, and even myself. But now, since you put it in two different things, mental health and mental illness, completely different things, now I see the full picture of what this is, and that's thank you for putting that in such a great perspective.
Oh, no problem. It's so important. That's gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. There was something you said that I wanted to touch on, but it's so, if we take a proactive approach, which is, I think, is absolutely imperative in this, we can keep it at mental health, right? Taking care of our mental health versus it becoming, right? Because really it's just health, right? If I eat better, if I take care of my mind, if I do what I need to do, I should be okay. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have bad days. Doesn't mean I'm not going to have moments. Oh, that's what it was. I was on Clubhouse and an athlete said something, about next play speed, right? Next play speed.
No.
Oh, okay. So something that we talk about in basketball is leave the last play.
Or next play mentality.
Yeah, next play mentality. Okay, yeah. So I call it next play speed, whatever it is, but it's just basically like, okay, we're going to the next play. We got to leave the last play back there. It's hard for an athlete to do that when their highlights are being replayed to them everywhere, right? Marty Fish talks about when he walks out, he has a terrible game, and then he hears a commentator talking about it, and that messes with his head to the point that he's playing what that commentator said over and over in his head as he was already beating himself up, but now he's got an extra voice on top of it. So it's really important to understand that they don't think they can talk about it because you're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be somebody who's like that can handle it, right? And then you got other athletes like, look, I think the press makes me tough. And then you got other people that are like, I don't know, everybody's different, but I'm fine. But the thing is everybody's not telling the truth, because what happens is if they tell the truth, they're concerned that they will make less money. The coach will look for some other person, right, in other places. So it's really important that we understand that mental health can be taken care of if we allow it to be. But in this idea, just like anything, if you basically put grass over a hole, eventually somebody's going to fall in that mofo. And so it's the same thing. Like, these athletes are playing with fire by not taking care of their mental health. And this is true of anyone. If you're a basketball coach, and I know you already went through playing basketball, but if at some point you couldn't coach anymore, you'd go through the same challenge, right? And it happens as a father, as a husband, as a whatever your identity is. If it's too attached to something, there's always room to caution there.
Beautiful. I think that's a great place to end it. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Let everybody know where they can follow all the great things that you were doing.
Yes. So I have a website. It's BrynDrescher.com. It is being revamped. So if you don't wait, there's nothing about mental performance there. We're launching very soon, I think in October. So you can find me on all social media platforms, pretty much just /Bryn Drescher, @Bryn Drescher on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Just search my name. You will find me on LinkedIn. And my main place that I post on the regular is Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and occasionally on TikTok and Facebook. So those are the places, but please connect with me there. You can send me a DM if you got any value from this, or you want to reach out and have me talk to your athlete or to your team. I'd be happy to do that. Can I mention one other thing, Chris?
Sure can.
My podcast. I can't believe I almost forgot to say it. So I have a podcast called the Mental Advantage Podcast. Just released my 18th episode today. Chris's is going to be coming out in a couple weeks. So if you want to check your host of this podcast out, it'll be coming up in a couple weeks. But we talk about all things about the mental side of the game and the various pivot points of superstar high performers like Chris and people from the world of sport, about how they handled their career and the transition out of their career if they happen to be done playing. And definitely check it out. It's everywhere. You can find it on Apple, BrynDrescher.com /Apple, or you can find it on YouTube via my YouTube channel, Bryn Drescher. But absolutely, the Mental Advantage podcast, please check it out. We'd love to have you as a subscriber and a listener, just like the Beyond the Buckets podcast.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.